Hey, Fiends of the Pod, Nate Wyckoff, your host here again, reminding you like, subscribe, and yes, it is hard to come up with these extra little special things for every episode. But like my good friend behind me, Godzilla, I will not stop until every single building in a metropolitan area is destroyed if you don't like and subscribe. Enjoy, and please go to cultandclassicfilms.com to pick up exclusive cult movies, and also you can subscribe and have them delivered at a discount to your door every single month. Enjoy the show.
Welcome to Cult and Classic.
Welcome, friends and fiends, to another episode of Cult and Classic Films Podcast. I am your host, film critic and comedian Nate Wyckoff. I am excited to be here as always. As you may have noticed, if you're a regular listener to the pod, we've had sporadic new episodes lately. There's a reason for that. I got overwhelmed. Not with the pod. We do have some fantastic movies being released at cultandclassicfilms.com in special editions, regular editions, all that cool stuff. And we are gearing up for the new year where we're launching some brand new film options, live screenings, all sorts of cool things. So that has sort of pushed the podcast episode, new ones, a little behind, and I'm sorry for that, but we are getting back on track. And today that is happening with our talk here about Red One from 2024, starring kind of a lot of people. We have Dwayne The Rock Johnson, Chris Evans, and Lucy Liu, just to name a few. I would also throw in J.K. Simmons. I think it's a crime he's not more prominent on the poster. But with me today, I have longtime contributor and recent returner, Greg Johnson. How you doing, Greg?
I'm not here for a long time. I'm not here for a good time. I don't know why I'm here.
Um, are we recording? Am I crazy?
No,
It is
yeah, yeah,
recording.
yeah. We're
Okay.
recording. We're on. This is live. This is real.
This is real. Okay, it says recording. This has been one of those I have to check the most obvious things. And yeah, and if it sounds a little different, it's because I have blocked off my recording booth. So with boxes, welcome to the holiday season. So we will power through and talk about this movie. This movie is one of those where when it came out, lots of people were excited for it. It came out in theaters very briefly, and now it's streaming on Amazon Prime for free if you're a Prime member, and otherwise you can pay to rent it. It was critically kind of panned. They were like, I think some reviews said at best entertaining, but soulless. I saw the word soulless a lot, by the numbers, that sort of thing. Yet, according to Amazon, as we know, these numbers are always sort of proprietary and opaque. Same with Netflix. But this is their highest streamed movie right now, and I think ever in the United States for an original release. So it's doing quite well despite the reviews. I didn't really have any expectations going in. If you've seen the trailer, you see lots of like 2000s era Bryan Singer X-Men costumes in red and black, and Dwayne Johnson and so forth, and you see giant mutant snowmen. That sold me enough. I was like, I'll stay for the snowmen, and we'll figure out the rest. But there's a lot to talk about. Greg, had you seen anything on this movie, and what did you expect going in?
I think I'd seen maybe the trailer. Someone had, I think my brother had told me about it. Just like, yep, Dwayne The Rock Johnson. He's an elf, sort of. But I think my only expectations, I thought there'd be more J.K. Simmons. Your note on
Yeah,
him being a little smaller on the poster, I'm like, well, that tells you a little bit about his role in the film.
yeah, it's interesting because I love J.K. Simmons. I'm a big fan.
Oh yeah.
And first thing I'll note is that I don't know about anyone else, but it seems like for the past like couple of years, he's jacked in every role. Like that's just his thing. Whether or not he's shirtless or not, he's jacked. Justice League, Snyder's Justice League. Ever since then, it's just been jacked, jacked, jacked,
Yeah,
jacked.
didn't he get jacked for that?
He did. And I think he stayed that way. And even in this, where you don't see him like shirtless or anything, he plays a character that's jacked. Santa Claus is doing tons of reps and
Yeah, I mean, you see him in a workout like
yeah,
chest hugger shirt, and you're like, oh man, J.K. Simmons. Like, you could tell me he's like just a weird looking 40, and I'd be like, sure, like, yeah,
yeah, I totally agree. I also really liked him as Santa in this. He has that sort of like um just kind of warm like the grandpa that you don't see as often as the other one, but you like more. Just like really in the sort of sparkle in the eye kind of old Saint Nick. They didn't bother making him like chunky. He's definitely kind of the European, wiry version in a way. But I loved seeing him in there. But as you said, not as much. He's asleep for like the entire center of the movie until like the final few minutes. So we get him kind of within the first 10 minutes or so. We see him a lot, and then he's just asleep. He's captured in his sleep. The
You do
plot
get to
is,
see him wing diving or like
oh
squirrel
yes,
suit
that's
whatever right at
true.
the end, and
Yes.
like I do love the idea that like delivering presents to billions of kids all around the world requires some serious cardio.
Yeah, and he does like parkour off of
Yeah.
build like from roof to roof. Yeah, so the plot is that this is a world where there's all sorts of mythical creatures and people that are real, although we don't see them. It's kind of a common trope, sort of Hellboyish. And Santa Claus is captured by is it Gila? Gula?
Yeah, got well. Whatever. Don't say her name. It summons
Right.
her.
She'll know where we are.
So
Yeah. She's a I believe a Norwegian, but I could be slightly off. But she's a witch that lives in the Eastern European woods and
I think
punishes people.
the Christmas Witch is
Yeah.
like her nickname. Yeah.
Yeah, and she's played by the actress who played Sabrina in the Chilling Adventures of Sabrina. She's looking much more less strange. I feel like she always looked kind of strange in Sabrina. They gave her that horrible bleach blonde hair. She's looking more normal here. Um, her why can't I think of her name? It is Kiernan Shipka. So she's doing that role. And for anybody who is disappointed, oh, well, I thought the villain would be Krampus. Well, he's not the villain, but Krampus is in here as well. And some great practical effects. There's a lot of 3D, but there's some great practical effects when we get to Krampus's a castle keep, which does come up in here. And he's played by a Game of Thrones veteran who is I'm looking for his pic. Here's the thing. When you look for pictures of people from this movie who play big monsters, you don't clearly see them, but it's Christopher Hivju. Hivju, I have no concept of how to pronounce that, but he does a delightful job. And you'd recognize him if you saw him. He played I think Torgman. See, the names are just not coming to me today.
Okay.
But anywho, yes, he's in Game of Thrones. You'd recognize him, sort of red shock of hair and beard. He does a great job. You don't ever see him in a normal face at the moment or in this film. And who cares? He's Krampus, and that's nice. And we get some Krampus knocks. Get a lot of weird creatures in this movie, which I did not expect. Um, but just kicking it out, Sabrina, the witch's character, kidnaps Santa so she can take back a gift she gave Krampus when they were dating, which is a globe that can trap people who are naughty. And her plan is to punish everyone who has ever had a minor infraction to a great infraction and make the world a better place. That seems to include her, so I don't know what her real purpose in life is. However, she only has one of the globes, so she needs Santa to power this duplicator machine to make a million, billion, zillion globes so she can give one to every naughty person in the world. Chris Evans is a non-Santa believing con artist, and otherwise, beyond that, he sort of plays his villainous character from Knives Out. Um,
He's
being
also a deadbeat dad. There's a lot
Yes.
going
Yep.
on.
Yeah, he's a deadbeat dad. And it was sort of implied in the beginning that he had a deadbeat dad. So his answer to that when he has a child is to be a deadbeat dad so his son doesn't become a deadbeat dad. I don't know if that logic checks. I don't think it does. But
You have to watch the movie to find out.
exactly. So anyway, so Dwayne The Rock Johnson, there's definitely some sort of pun going on with his character's name. I didn't quite understand it per se. But that's all right. He's the top security for Santa, and he's quitting because his name is Callum Drift. He's become disillusioned with people's goodness, innate goodness. He sees kids and parents being jerks, and he's getting tired of it. The movie goes through exactly what you would expect, sort of plot wise, right? The people that are not so great come around. Everyone comes through in the end except for the Christmas witch, who is actually a troll. We find out a giant troll. So it's a superhero movie, but Christmas, I guess, is sort of, or an action movie, sort of a buddy cop action movie, sort of a 48 hours for kids, a lot less N-word references and no Eddie Murphy or or Nick Nolte. So I enjoyed this movie actually myself. I thought it was fun. There's this weird thing that I find with Christmas movies where they're often, or just live action Christmas movies, they're so rarely good movies, but they tend to, for me, be kind of entertaining. Like everything from Christmas with the Cramps to what's the one with was it Ultraman with Schwarzenegger? Um, I
Oh,
can't
a Jingle All the Way.
Jingle All the Way.
Yeah.
They're not they're not good movies objectively, but they have this cult sort of appeal. Maybe it's because we see them when we're kids, and so there's this whole genre of like middle of the road live action Christmas movies. Um, and I think it's the addiction to like people who have addictions to the Hallmark movies where everything is so trite and expected. It's sort of we have that experience with these as well, like Tim Allen the Santa Claus and its sequels. Um, there's Jack Black's new one, which I actually kind of love the idea of a kid tries to call Santa and he summons Satan. Um, and Satan played by Jack Black. So there's some cool ideas that could be done, but they keep it pretty safe. It mixes some Men in Black. There's Operation Santa Claus is a whole operation. Um, we have Lucy Liu, who is still ageless, and yes, she does fight with sort of two stick weapons. So call back to every movie that's ever cast her as a martial arts expert. Um, Chris Evans is from Jersey in this. I don't know why they didn't just move it to Boston. I mean, he sounds Boston in the entire movie. Um, so I don't know why they chose Jersey. Uh, but I guess it's sort of this weird stereotype. Like, oh, maybe it's not a stereotype. I'm not from Jersey, but it sure seems like every time there's a deadbeat dad, they're in Jersey. So, Jersey, chime in. Send your hate mail to Tad, care of info@cultandclassicfilms.com. So, what surprised you in this movie, if anything?
Um, I had fun. I think that surprised me.
Hmm.
It's funny that you brought up the Dear Santa, the Jack Black holiday
Hmm.
film this year. Um, I couldn't get through it.
Bummer.
Halfway in, I bailed. Versus this, I watched all the way through.
Hmm.
Um, uh, I saw someone that had seen it, a friend, they gave a review, something to the effect of, I would have liked this if I was 9 years old.
Hmm.
And I thought about that a lot more, and I was like, yeah, actually, like if I was like 9, 10, like I would have loved this movie. That
Yeah.
said, if I had a 9 or 10 year old and I took them to this, it's palatable.
Yeah.
And
That's a good
like,
point.
it's funny to hear like, oh, getting panned and soulless and stuff, and
Hmm.
like, is this film is not Citizen Kane. It's not
Right.
above
It's not
reproach.
supposed to be either.
Yeah, for that reason. But I think I don't know. You like it or you don't. I feel like, you know what, maybe the best way of putting it, this is a film where you should read audience review scores, not critic review
Very
scores,
much so.
because you're not going to learn anything from a critic. They're going to say it's a shitty movie, and you know what? Yeah, objectively it is. But is it fun? Yeah. Um,
Yeah. Well, like you said with the Jack Black movie, which I'm still going to give a try, but I mean, I
it,
I think of year one with Jack Black and uh wow, I'm
Michael
totally blank.
Cera.
Michael Cera, who is like,
Um,
we all
yeah.
longtime listeners of the pod know that he is like he's my vote for president every election year. Um, I couldn't get through it, and that's one of those things where you can't sort of excellent your way out of something that's just
What was
dull.
year one rated? Do you
They
remember?
had, I don't remember. They had an unrated one as well. I think it was PG-13 when it launched.
Okay. Well, here, when you finally try Dear Santa, tell me if you don't think it should have been rated R.
Okay.
And also, my big gripe, not to divulge completely, but it focused too much on the kid's story. Um,
I want
that one,
Satan.
yeah, I
Yeah.
want I want Jack Black as Satan. Spoilers. But
It's in the
but
preview. It's
yeah,
fine.
yeah, everyone knows. But yeah, I don't know. Versus this, I'm like, you know what? I want a Save Christmas movie that's action oriented. And that's all it is. That's all Red
Yeah.
One does.
Yeah.
Dwayne Johnson even has a great moment where he's like, "Come on, say it." And Chris Evans like, I don't want to say anything.
Yeah.
Like, come on, say we're gonna save Christmas.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
It's sort of like the movie is self-aware that it's going through the paces of a
yeah,
standard like action comedy. Like they took a Marvel movie template and just said not like one of not like the first Captain America, but more like Ant-Man and Wasp. They took it and they were like, here's the template. It's not going to be too heavy. Let's just fill out all the pieces. We have the big boss. It's Lucy Liu to save the ultimate hero. The King Richard, the Santa, and then we have the guy that's the conflicted hero, and then we have the deadbeat guy that's got to come around, and it's Christmas, so it's got to be because he's got a son that he doesn't see. It's all these things, and there are parts of it that feel like they said, "Oh, we got to make like a producer came in and it's like somebody's got to be a spy," and they just typed it into AI like add spy. Like there's a little bit of that going on, but I think that it's a little bit somebody went through and did some punch ups because it does have some moments like there's stupid moments, but they're clearly for the adults. Like when there's the scene, the like required scene in the car where the two characters at odds, Evan's con man and Dwayne Johnson's valiant security guard. They like they have to have that thing where they kind of thaw a little to each other. And there's that moment where he's like, I do this 364 days a year. And it's like, what's on the 365th? It's like, we get Boxing Day off. Like that's funny.
Yeah.
It's like it's stupid, it's funny, it's not meaningful, but it's entertaining. The 9-year-old part really comes into play with the complete lack of uh, logic or explanation in some of the magical elements. Like Dwayne Johnson has I forget what he calls it. It's like a reality alternator, but essentially it's a shrink ray and a grow ray. He says it doesn't work on everything, but
It's a
God,
red herring. It's a
yeah,
Deus Ex Machina. It's whatever
yeah,
you want it
it's
to
this
be.
it's like a gauntlet that they stole from the Tom Cruise Mummy movie set and slapped on his arm. It's a Ben 10, it's all those things.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, and something I noticed about this movie, I think, like you said, it moves because it gives you new characters and set pieces every step of the way. Like it's sort of a journey movie. They're supposed to be tracking the villain, but really they know the villain kind of early, and so they're just going to these different places to try and find where they are and what their plan is. So we get like, we know what the North Pole looks like. It's like a steampunk Victorian giant domed city. I'm not quite sure the total logistics of that.
But I mean, it also has that Victorian era, but like in that like super factory looking way. Like
Yeah, like this
it
Dickensian nightmare sort of. It's sort of
yeah,
like you expect that there's, like orphaned children running around shining shoes and cleaning out chimneys, which I thought
yeah.
was kind of interesting. There's no Christmas lights, by the way, in the North Pole, I thought. I mean, unless somebody points them out, I didn't see that on the rooftops. I just saw lights and smokestacks and like gambled
Yeah.
roofs.
I mean, there's
Um,
no time for that. That's not utilitarian.
no,
So
right. They're planning hardcore every, Mrs. Claus is played by Bonnie Hunt. She has a very small role, but it's nice to see her. It's nice when they fill in people with like, oh, we haven't seen them in a while. Um, the, okay, I got to talk about. I was going somewhere else, but I got to talk about the creatures that assist Santa, and that are all over. First off, the movie is full of, like I said, it's Hellboy 2 for kids, sort of. Like there's just
yeah,
tons of creatures. Many of them are 3D, but like in Krampus's, that's my favorite part is the Krampus house. Like there's a lot of practical effects. There's like they're all bipedal humanoid, but one of them has a fish for a head, and like there's just interesting things. But Santa's actual like group, um, Dwayne The Rock Johnson's not supposed to be human. We don't ever we know he says he's like 300 years old. I have no idea why he's not human or how he's not human. That's never explained. It's just sort of stated. But then it, I can only imagine they're actual elves or maybe goblins because they say that like there's trolls and stuff, and elf is actually an acronym. But there are
yeah,
these little nightmare creatures. They look sort of like what are they, axolotls or
yeah, yeah. That's a great way. Or
like
what? Like I don't know. Anytime you've ever seen like a creature in a film where it's like there's a ton of them and they all look really cute, and then
yeah,
the main character approaches and they're like, "Oh, how cute!" And then they all show their sharp fangs. It looks like that. Like just imagine
yes.
that creature in your mind.
Like sort
It's
of like a
that.
goblin shark face, or not a goblin shark, those lump fish that are just like big balls of white
Oh yeah,
round. Um, yeah, they're running around and they're really unnerving. In fact, if anybody watched the cartoon or read the comics of the Max, they're like the Izzes, those little white critters that are running around all the time trying to get him. Um,
You also got the internet trolls, which
I
I mean
love that. Yeah, his
that's
IT are trolls,
yeah,
and they're
and they're like internet like IT,
yeah,
yeah,
they're
IT.
nerds. Yeah,
That's
they're
what,
all
yeah.
playing Worlds of Warcraft off screen. Um, it's so funny because there's a lot of, if you pay attention, there's a lot of like the wordplay jokes, like pun joke, visual puns that are like not they're not played for humor. They're just like said straight, and like some of them it's you can skip them like totally. Like um, when Krampus is talking about when the witch used to be when they were together, when she used to be magnificent, 18 feet tall with two huge tails. Like there's no pause, there's no like he even holds his hand up, but it's like it's like the joke was written there, but it's almost like they intentionally just steamrolled some jokes to just say, nah, we're not going to do that. We're not going to change the dialogue. We told the writer we wouldn't. We're friends. We're just going to steamroll it. So there's just no acknowledgement of this horrible joke. Um,
And maybe that's a testament to the acting in this. Like,
yeah.
I mean, like the writing, like, I feel like we could debate what, is that what's soulless about it? Is it the beats of the movie, etc.? But like,
Hmm.
it didn't feel like anyone phoned it in. Like, even like
Yeah.
my brother hates Dwayne Johnson. He's like, I will not see a movie with him. He plays the same character. And I'm like, yeah, he does.
He does.
But
He
also
plays it.
like,
Yeah.
Will Ferrell plays the same character. So
Right.
like, there's all these kind of like
And to be fair, The
the
Rock played
character
a
is
different
them.
character in Doom, but that was the one, and that
Yes.
was one of his worst reviewed movies. So I enjoyed it. But yeah, anyway. Um,
But yeah, I don't know, like the delivery of that line, like you said, like there's no there's no
yeah.
weird beat. It's just Krampus. Yes, these two big tails, and you're like, oh, okay, like there was no time to kind of take your mind elsewhere. It was just this is the joke.
Yep.
This is the joke.
Yeah, exactly. It's sort of like yeah, yeah, it's like if a news anchor was reading a teleprompter and they were just screwing up the teleprompter guy who was trying to get them fired. Like every time they wrote something inappropriate and the person would just, pronounce it in the least like jokey way possible. And it's probably good because a lot of the jokes that they kind of steamrolled were just the most old, god awful jokes, and I was happy they weren't there. There's moments of bizarre accuracy, like when like Santa calls the reindeer females, which they are, or women, which they are, or girls, whatever he says, because during the winter time, I think only the female have actually antlers or something like that.
Yeah, no,
It's
that's it exactly. Which I mean, it's a fun little detail.
Yeah, and they don't really reference it, and they don't explain it. So it was interesting that there's like that sort of reality thrown into something that has the highest count of insane, like sort of, I don't know how to describe it except for like a non sequitur creative thing, like the shrink ray, the fact that he says it doesn't work on everything, but it works on everything that he uses it on. Um,
It is very funny that yeah, in a world of total make believe and a bunch of Santa lore, as it were, they're
mhm.
like, yeah, but only female reindeer have their antlers in winter, so his whole team has to be women, and you're like, oh, okay, like that's a fact. That is a fact, and it is in the film.
Exactly. And I gotta say, I don't know if they were filmed on the same lot or if they had a screening before they started production on this, but there are a weird number of like Deadpool and Wolverine parallels in this. There's the apartment scene where like the Santa's, goon squad is trying to collect him and they show up, they like follow him and at his door, it's like a weird refilming of the apartment fight scene where um, the time guard people come to try and collect Deadpool, and they even pull out like later on they pull out the zap sticks. Lucy Liu uses them. It's just a very strange, and the weapons that they're using, they're not sticks, but they're these like sort of Halo-esque handgun things that when they touch them to someone, it electrocutes them in like a really kind of terrifying way. Like you see their skeleton and empty nose socket, but then it freezes them and then they can unfreeze them with I guess, a different colored thing. Why it wasn't like frost, I don't know. Maybe it's because the snowmen use like this freezing technology later, but I'm like, it is like Santa, right? Like, and he's cold. Um, like, why is it just like this electric freezing thing. It reminded me, there's a Riff Tracks, uh, famous, now infamous covering of the insane old pirate, I think it's Pirate Bay or Pirate Cove. I don't remember. It must be Pirate Cove and not Pirate Bay, but they had this, I don't know if they still have it. It's a theme park in Florida and a couple of other places, but they made these insane shorts and they compiled one of them with like framing stories into a movie called Santa Claus and the Ice Cream Bunny. And one of the comments they make, because Santa's calling all these children for help, is he gets these voiceovers and it shows different children in different areas and they freeze. And their line is like, come help me, children, or I'll freeze you with my dark Santa magic. And that's what I thought of here because they're freezing people and it's Santa's squad. I don't know. It just, there's enough weird references to other film scenes in this movie that I don't know where it stops. I don't know how deep the cuts are because later on they go to the is it the Krampus place? It is the Krampus place. They go to get into his like his castle, his villa, whatever it is. It's the Beauty and the Disney's Beauty and the Beast castle is what it is. But with the same ballroom. But they go there and there's these two like sort of iguanoid demon dogs they call hellhounds. And that it's exactly like Paul W.S. Anderson's first Mortal Kombat movie, where they have the two dog critters come out at one point, or the monsters or whatever on statue. It's that scene again. There's just these weird beats that I was like, I saw
Which is
one.
funny because I thought it was the Gozer
Yeah, the Ghostbusters very
Ghostbuster.
much.
Yeah.
And I think that was definitely a take in the Mortal Kombat movie. They took it from that, right? Like it's that very much that kind of thing. I also want to throw in that's one of the insane things that I was like, there has to be a reason, was the fact that The Rock pulls out a chicken to distract the dogs.
Right.
And he says, Helen, it's you're up. And he throws the chicken, and the chicken like nods at him, by the way. It's apparently this is what it does. And the chicken leads these two demon dogs, these hellhounds, on like a wild goose chase. So they're out of the picture for the rest of the movie. Here's the thing. There has to be a reason, right? Well, the only reference to a Helen that is a chicken about Christmas time that I can find is there is Helen Henny, who is a sort of B-League Chuck E. Cheese character that appeared in several of the Christmas animated specials that they did. She was never pictured on stage in the band, but she does play bass and I think tambourines. Anyway, and she has had numerous appearances. There's like I said, there's so many weird references that feel like they're just for the writer or director or somebody themselves that I feel like, is that really it? Did they actually do that? Or somebody like, man, I loved this janky Chuck E. Cheese, direct to video only sold at the restaurant tape that has Helen Henny, the chicken, the Christmas chicken. It
You
just
know,
feels like it has to be.
if there's any movie where something gets passed off to some intern or first AD or just some rando on the set and like, hey, you know what? Just take care of this. And they're like, you know what? Yeah, Helen, I'm gonna do this deep cut for the chicken name and like and no one cares because it like we don't care what the like as long as you're
Yeah.
not calling like oh the chicken's name is like fuckhead like no like that's not gonna fly like let's tone it down you know.
Oh, so true. Yeah, no, it totally makes sense. And the script writers, by the way, it's Chris Morgan, who did he did some of the Fast and the Furious films, and Hiram Garcia, who did the story for this, who did the Jumanji movies with The Rock, as well as worked on Fast and Furious. So they're longtime contributors to the Rock films. Jake Kasdan directed, and he's also done a lot of that kind of. He did Jumanji, the sequel. He also did Walk Hard, the Dewey Cox story, if anybody remembers that John C. Riley vehicle. So, these people have done this kind of movie level, and they worked with Dwayne The Rock Johnson a lot. I I mean, there's a lot of characters in this that seem to be in there for like, I don't know, like they're just friends and they just wanted like, hey, you want to come film for 4 hours and get $20,000? Like Mark Evan Jackson, who he's been in all sorts of things. But I remember him most from Brooklyn Nine-Nine as Hoyt's Hoyt's husband. He's in there in the very beginning. Um,
Right.
there's
Yeah. Yeah.
there's this framing story that isn't really necessary. It's supposed to show us that I think that Chris Evans' character is like doesn't believe in Santa because his dad never showed up. So I don't think that's one of those moments that's like AI. Like the AI pulled out like some general story and then like because Christmas and they're like, yeah, but that movie that's not the same. That's not a Christmas movie. That's just a movie, and you just said it's related to Christmas because of the same tone.
It is also
Anyway.
setting up that like Chris Evans' character, like, oh, as a kid, he finds the Christmas presents that are hidden for the other kids and they pay him for
Hmm.
it. And then like
Yeah.
you see later, like,
He's a
oh yeah,
con man.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, he's a tracker. He knows how to like track people and like, oh, okay, blah blah
Good
blah.
point. Yeah.
But yeah, yeah. Why is Mark Evan Jackson there? As I pulled it up on IMDb. Why is he there as Uncle Rick? Like, good for him. It's like
I'm always
he's
happy to see him. I
he's
mean, he did a
yeah.
good job in that one
Pull him in
scene.
on a little more, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. I kind of
Or
expected him to show up again later.
yeah,
Like
right.
maybe he would be at the end because it part of the thing is Chris Evans' character is like missing because he didn't want to go because he's a deadbeat. His son's like guitar recital and the Christmas pageant where he plays guitar, I think. And he's
Yeah.
like, why wasn't Uncle Rick in the audience, like shaking his head, like, I told you not to ask. I told you he would let you down, like that sort of thing. Um, I don't know. It just sort of there's a lot of people in here that I just expected to see more. Nick Kroll has a bit part in it. They definitely tried to utilize him by making him do weird faces, which has sort of worked, but I think you could have used him better. I would have watched Big Mouth for the 10,000th time and said, what are some voices he could do? Maybe we could find a way to make him do some voices instead of just the demon voice and like because he gets possessed by the witch and he talks to them. It's irrelevant. It's just to get to the next scene.
Yeah.
But yeah, and again, I think what people are getting probably is that there's a lot of different things that happen in this movie. It keeps you going enough that you don't have to, you don't have time to think or wonder like, this is kind of stupid. Um, it is, but that doesn't matter. There's a couple of really awesome designs in this movie that are not touched on very much. Like we see the first mythical creatures that Chris Evans sees is we see the nightmare horse with like the flaming skull face and the headless horseman
Yeah.
and like the
Yep.
living jack-o'-lantern head. That was
It's very
rad.
cool.
It was very classic but very rad, and it's sort of just like I do like how she's like, why do you have him? It's like we're just rounding up the usual characters. Like it's sort of they could have played certain things differently. Like if they did want to make it more geared a little bit towards like teens and adults, they could have made it like a straight cop movie. Like they're cops and they're bringing in, Santa's, the North Pole PD or whatever. They could have done something like that, but it would have been a different movie, right? That's the Melissa McCarthy version. The one where there's an R cut when it comes out on DVD and Blu-ray. Um, the there's a Planet Hoth sort of view. We get the Planet Hoth when we don't yet know it's Sabrina, the teenage witch post Melissa Joan Hart. We don't know it's her yet, but we see like the eyes of a young lady through like the mask of like these ski things when they go to find where Saint Nick is, the North Pole. Which, by the way, if it's the North Pole, it should be at the North Pole. So,
Yeah, it did seem I lost the thread a little bit on like why this like Christmas witch needed some con man to track down Santa when like how much of the North Pole
right,
do you need? Especially if like it's not like there's a magical barrier and like Chris Evans at the long lost son. Like no, it just
right.
she just Mission Impossible's her way in with
Yeah,
her
by the way, she's a shape changer. Like her and
as
her children
are
are
her
shape
13
changers.
sons.
So they could have just because the whole point is Chris Evans getting involved in this because he's a con man, criminal tracker, and he just gives people like information, and he breaks in this really elaborate, kind of entertainingly choreographed job where he sneaks into, he doesn't even sneak, he steals an ID card and he goes into this geological organization where they track seismic activity, and I guess Santa's thing causes some like sonic boom, and anyway, so that's what he does. He gives them that information. He doesn't know what it's going to be used for. She could have just walked in and done that. They're shape
Yeah,
changers.
yeah,
Like,
it seems like yeah, we need a straight man, but not really straight man because Chris Evans was very much like the humor, but like he with the driving force.
yeah,
There's a lot of plot points that when you kind of break them down, you're
he's
like,
Ryan
yeah,
Reynolds to to Hugh Jackman's Wolverine in a way. Like it really does parallel it a lot in certain
Yeah,
ways. And so that's why I feel like this one was rushed out and they had seen pre-screenings or somehow knew. Because I mean, come on, like because Chris Evans was in Deadpool and Wolverine. So
yeah, yeah.
it just there has to be some tie. I don't even if it's subconscious, it cannot be unintentional at this point. Um,
I wonder. I also wonder. I don't know if we already mentioned that J.K. Simmons has played Santa before.
yeah, what was the? I was trying to think of what that was.
Klaus, that animated. I
Klaus,
think it's a
that's right.
Netflix
Yeah,
film.
it's from a comic book. Yeah,
Yeah,
Alan Grant, I think.
and it's really good. It's
Yeah,
it's 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 like the heartfelt come home family Christmas film that you want to watch and maybe cry a little bit. And so
yeah.
it's just funny to see, like, yeah, I don't know, like a very different Santa movie with him still as live action Santa.
Can we talk about a couple of really other really weird things? So one, there's a Nintendo Switch product placement. There's this game that all the kids want called like
Right.
Vampire Assassin 4, I think, which by the way, the cover looked cool. I would play that. It looks like one of those swell indie games that does really well on Steam. Um, and yet, because it's an Amazon production, I didn't see one Amazon product placement. And they had a drone carrying a present at one point. And that was my assumption is that it was going to be an Amazon drone, but it's not clear. So I don't know what occurred with that. If they came in afterward to finish production and just pay for distribution. But I thought that was strange. We do have a
The film is the ad for Amazon. They're like,
exact totally.
this is what Amazon
You
money
want it
makes.
tomorrow? Santa
Yeah.
it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's a Corvette product placement, which is another inconsistency because there is no way in hell Dwayne Johnson fits in a regular Corvette.
Oh
I
yeah.
can barely fit in a regular Corvette. It absolutely does not. It is not the case. Um,
Well, he uses his shrink device and
he shrinks like I don't know, like 15%
yeah.
to like normal size. They did a good job of trying to make Chris Evans look small because he's not. But he sort of rock towers over him, and I think there's maybe a couple of inches difference. Um,
I mean, he's kind of got that con man walk, a little bit of a slouch,
yeah, he did
and then some, digital and camera trickery.
yeah, and he's not like Captain America, holding the helicopter against the building big in this, but you can tell in a couple of shots that yeah, he's fit underneath, and it's a little bit more than you would need for this character. So they always have him in jackets and things like that. So it's effective. Uh, here's the thing though. The weirdest, most unnerving, as a last point, it's upsetting to me, is when at the very beginning when Santa's kidnapped, The Rock's character is like radioing all his team, like, find Santa, like give me reports. Is he in so and so? And they go through all the things. Like he's not in wrapping, he's not in, loading, he's not in the bakery or whatever. Remember, he's not in the nursery. What is in the nursery? What is in the nursery
I like to imagine
in
product
Santa's workshop?
testing. I imagine that like there's kids that he like kidnaps and like changeling stuff, and he's
Survey.
like,
It's a survey
yeah,
room.
yeah,
There's just
yeah,
a
it's a
big,
survey
there's a
room.
one-way glass mirror.
Yeah.
They have buttons. No, because it was upsetting because I'm like, because it's not just at first I was like, I was like, okay, well, I guess his Santa's workshop is like it is the city, right? Like all these creatures have babies and they have to have somewhere for them to be watched or whatever.
Yeah.
But no, there's this whole town, this village around it. So like huge. So that's where they live. You see that right after. And so what is happening? Like, how much
You know what
fornication
it
is
is.
happening in Santa's workshop that they need a nursery?
I mean, as much as any good old fashioned like coal mining town, where you're
Yes.
paid in Santa bucks and you buy your Santa bread
This
at the Santa shop.
That's where the Amazon placement is. The Amazon placement is that everything takes house in Amazon. You just
Yeah.
bring your children and you work 24 hours a day. We'll watch your kids.
Jeff Bezos is Santa Claus,
That's,
truly.
oh God.
I
That
you live and work at work because it's we take better care of you than you would of
You have
yourself.
Boxing Day off. That's it. That's the trick. They're in Canada. You could have found out right away.
Yeah.
They get Boxing Day off. So that really upset me because all I could picture was all of these weird little goblin creatures procreating and then having to like leave their scary mythical spawn in this nursery. Uh,
And if we're getting to final thoughts before we do the big hot takes here. I want to give a shout out to one throwaway joke by Chris Evans, and I don't know if it was written, if it was a little bit of improv, what it was, but they him and Dwayne Johnson, they show up to the Bahamas, somewhere tropical, whatever. Insert paradise here, looking for someone, and Chris Evans' character sees an attractive woman walking by in a bikini, kind of does a double take or a follow of like, ooh,
Mhm.
nice. And then he kind of looks over like to Dwayne Johnson as if to like I don't know, guy shit or whatever.
Right.
Dwayne Johnson didn't even blink, dead set on his mission. Said that
Hmm.
Chris Evans kind of gives a shrug, like like really, like you didn't check her out, like all right, like
He does a lot of really good like when you said they commit 100%, like that big opening number where he's like doing all these crazy things like nonchalantly that cause the chain of events that lets him get into the thing that's clearly like he steals candy from a baby unnecessarily,
oh
like all these
yeah,
things.
what
That
that was such
opening,
a great way to pitch a character. I'm like,
I
is he
know,
gonna like you see him
I
look at the
know.
kid with the candy and you're like, does he steal candy from a baby? My God, he's not a good guy.
Totally funny. But like he does these like they give like these he does these actual like head shakes and things like after line delivery that is clearly not directed. It's him. And I did enjoy those. They're noticeable to in a good way. Um I think there might be a sequel because this movie did really well. And because
I'd
everybody
be
gives
down
it
for a sequel.
me
You
too.
know,
And because everybody gives it their all, it feels like they had fun together. Um
is it Red 2 and is it
oh my God, that's
still about Santa, or is it like Green One and it's about St. Patty's Day? Like what do we
I
do?
want a Krampus knocked. It could
Oh
be
my God.
red ones, two of them, and they're both. You know what I mean?
And the
That's
brothers have to team up to save
oh my God,
Christmas.
I love it. Like maybe Krampus has to teach him to be a little harder, and he teaches in the process he teaches his brother to loosen up.
Yeah, yeah.
And then at the end they're just playing the slap war, and then it freezes like at the end of Rocky with Rocky and Apollo Creed. Anyway,
You,
I'm
you know it's gonna be a prequel. We're gonna get God, the guy that's playing Spider-Man right now.
Tom Holland.
Tom Holland is young Santa, and we're gonna get Pedro Pascal for no reason to be quote unquote young Krampus.
That's the one that's we'll go to the recommendations just right now because I know we
Okay.
got 1 minute left. But I have
Yep.
to say my favorite joke that they went over with absolutely no explanation that they steamrolled. The giant human polar bear is named Garcia. What? I I'm like I'm so confused. It's there's just and you know that they wrote that like this is just bonkers and nobody like questioned like
Apparently, I think all the elves or whatever, it said that they all are speaking Portuguese.
this is Amazon. This straight up is Amazon. Like it's just they just digitize all their Amazon workers and just
The
you know
factory is actually
they they just AI'd everybody like you know what like the
you signed away your likeness when you got paid minimum wage here, and you fucking know it.
the sleigh is just one of the trucks they sent it over a bridge. Okay. All right. Thank you all so much. I'm going to give my recommendation. This is a fun movie. If you have kids, give it a shot. You won't be bored. It's goofy. It's just as stupid as it seems, but they know it. And so they played it for like fast-paced action. And it's 2 hours. In second watch, it might feel a little longer than it needs to be. But first watch, I didn't have a problem with it.
Yeah, and same for me. I mean, first watch, like, yeah, I enjoyed it. I had fun. I want to see a little bit more of the world. I think it's ripe for a sequel while still being a very self-contained film. So take that to heart that you're not gonna this doesn't end with like, oh, and like Chris Evans is like, and they actually my name's fucking Robin, and yeah, you'll enjoy it, and if you never watch anything else related to it again, you'll feel happy.
Yeah, and I think just last thing, be on the watch for it because you know that the Faku and all of the like erotic fan fiction is going to be full of Krampus having sex with the 18-foot tall troll. It's gonna happen. It is just the way it is because he's Maury. He's Nick Kroll's hormone monster come to life, and we all know that he's just women love that the
You know,
voice,
on
that all the
second
things.
thought, don't watch this movie. Turn off the internet. Blind yourself. Anything else you would like?
All right. Thank you all so much. Please catch us in another couple of weeks for a new episode, but we will have replayed episodes. So you won't have something, you won't not have something. Wait, what is it? You'll have something to listen to while your family is around and you're trying to escape. Enjoy the holiday season, and we will catch you when we return with Cult and Classic Films.